Hey guys, it's Adam from Premium Poker Tools, and in this video I want to talk about this hand that I played, and I want to talk about, how to go about making this decision here, where we have pocket aces and we're facing a bet on the river. So let's go over this hand. I open from early position, get a call from the button, flop comes 10, 9, 3, rainbow, I decide to check, and he checks behind. Then the turn comes a 3 of spades, and I lead out, and he raises me, and I call. Then the river comes a jack of clubs, and I really don't like this card, so I decide to check, and he bets out for $15. So now I have a decision to make, and the way that I go about making this decision, I like to divide his range into like 3 buckets. So the first bucket is value that beats me. The second one is value that I beat. And the third one is bluffs. So let me give you some examples so you see what I mean. So value that beats me, if he has pocket 9s, if he has pocket 10s, if he has pocket 3s, pocket jacks, king queen, 8-7, even like ace 3 or king 3. So like any of these hands is value, like he's betting these hands for value, and these hands beat me. So these are the kind of things that I mean when I talk about the first bucket. So the second bucket is like he's betting for value, and I happen to be ahead of like the hand that he's betting for value. So like let's look at ace jack. So maybe he decides to raise the turn with ace-jack. Now he catches the jack on the river, and I check, and, maybe he decides to bet thinking that I might call him with something with, like, king 10 or something. So that's what I mean in the second bucket. His thought process is like, I have ace-jack, I'm going to try to bet for value, and we are ahead of that. So this bucket actually, in this situation, I don't see many hands that would fit into this bucket. Like ace-jack or king-jack, maybe queen-jack. But if you think about it, like, let's say that he has queen-jack here. What is he hoping to get called by? Like queen-jack loses to jack-10. It loses to jack-9. I probably am not playing jack 8 or jack 7 or anything like that from early position. So what is he really hoping to get value from by betting something like queen jack here? And then the same thing with like king jack, or ace jack. It's hard for him to bet these hands and hope to get value from me. And most opponents are pretty passive. They're not really looking for thin value. I think like the large majority of players, if they have king jack here, they just want to check back and, get the showdown. So these are kind of some candidate hands, but I don't think that it's very likely that he has these hands. And then we can look at something like 10-9. Like 10-9 had a very strong hand on the turn. Then the river comes, and if I have a jack, I'm ahead of 10-9. So, it's kind of the same question. Like, what is he really hoping to get value from when he has 10-9? If I have ace-jack, I beat him. If I have king-jack, I beat him. And how many, like, 10-8s do I have? How many, like, ace-10s do I have? And am I even calling when I have ace-10? So things like 10-9 or jack-10 or jack-9, it's possible that he's betting these hands for some sort of thin value, but I think it's pretty unlikely. So just to be clear, these are the kind of hands that I'm talking about in the second bucket, when he has a hand that he is trying to get value from, but I happen to be ahead. But in this situation, I don't think he has a lot of things in this second bucket. So I'm going to go and I'm going to kind of strike this through, because I don't think he's making this play with any of these hands. So that leaves his hand distribution as being very polarized. He only has things in the first bucket and things in the third bucket. So, what that means is that my hand is a bluff catcher, that my hand only beats bluffs. My hand doesn't beat any of the things that he is value betting with. And I think that that's a really important thing to realize. You might be sitting here with pocket aces and you look and you're like, what a strong hand. I have pocket aces. I checked the flop looking for two streets of value. How am I going to fold pocket aces? But you have to understand that pocket aces performs about as well as like queen 10 here. Is pocket aces really that much better than queen 10? Probably not. Pocket aces doesn't beat any value that he has, and neither does queen 10. Like, both of them are only beating bluffs. Like, if he has 7-6 or something, or if he has like ace 2 of spades, like queen 10 beats that just as well as pocket aces beats that. So pocket aces and queen 10 perform about the same. They're both bluff catchers. They only beat bluffs. So that's why I like thinking about things in terms of these buckets, where you kind of break it down into bucket 1, bucket 2, and bucket 3. Because when they don't have anything in the second bucket, your hand turns into a bluff catcher. And I think that like realizing that your hand is a bluff catcher and thinking about it as a bluff catcher, that will help you make good decisions. Because if you think of your hand as pocket aces, like, it's tempting to think that that's a really strong hand. But if you tell yourself, I have a bluff catcher, like, that makes it a lot more realistic. You kind of realize that your hand isn't that strong. So, again, that's a reason why I like to break things down this way into these 3 buckets. And I want to give a shout out to Ed Miller. He's kind of the guy that I got this approach from. He talks about it in this article and in his book, The Course. So shout out to him. That's kind of where I learned this approach from. But yeah, let's kind of proceed to analyze this hand. So we have a bluff catcher, basically. So are we going to try to bluff catch with our pocket aces here? Well, the way to go about that is we kind of have to look at our pot odds. So we need to call 15 to win 35-53. So risk divided by risk plus reward. We need to win about 30% of the time to justify calling. So we have to ask ourselves, is he sitting here bluffing 30% of the time or more? And again, Ed Miller, like, his take on this is that when people make like a big strong play, like here he raised the turn and is betting the river, they usually don't have enough bluffs in their range for you to bluff catch. Like, he might be bluffing 5 or 10 or 15% of the time, but he probably isn't bluffing the required 30% of the time. So, the general approach is that when you're in one of these situations, to kind of err on the side of folding, to assuming that he doesn't have enough bluffs. And, if you're in a situation where you're playing against a very aggressive player, like, maybe that changes. If the board texture is such that, like, it doesn't make sense for them to have any value, maybe you can justify bluff catching. But here, I think that neither of those things are really true. I think that he has a lot of potential value. All of these hands are things that make sense for him to have. And, the things that he would be bluffing with, something like king-queen, if he raises the turn, like, that got there on the river. 8-7 got there on the river. So, like, what bluffs does he really have? Like, he could possibly be bluffing, like, ace-2 of spades, maybe like 7-6 with a gut shot. If he read like weakness on me, maybe he turns like 9-8 into a bluff or something. But I don't really see many bluffs that he can have. This isn't like a super aggressive player. There's a lot of value that makes sense for him to have. So I decided to fold here. Unfortunately, we're not going to see what he actually had, but that was my justification, and that was the way that I went about making the decision. So hopefully this video will be useful to you, this approach of kind of breaking things down into buckets and realizing that when they don't have anything in their second bucket, that no matter how strong your hand seems, like it's a bluff catcher, and I think that it would be helpful to think of your hand as a bluff catcher instead of, pocket aces here. So again, hopefully this video was useful and it made sense. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, contact@premiumpokertools.com. I'd love to kind of talk about any hands with you or talk about this kind of approach and strategy. But yeah, hopefully the video was useful to you, and thank you guys for watching.